Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the ESL Southeast Europe Championship. I'm getting a little bit better, Dip. Just a little bit,
Yeah.
just a little
I
bit
keep wanting
better.
to say Southeastern European, but yeah, other than that, it's fine.
We will have it down definitely by the finals. That's no doubt. But welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The next game that we're going to have for you is going to be Charzuull versus Blankieh.
Hmm.
Now we decided to stay away from the other guy that we
Prodigy.
were cast, Prodigy, because I'm terrible with names. But yeah, so we can see the other players going into the semi-final as well as then the final, so
Yep.
we can see exactly what kind of matchups are we going to be having there. The picks and bans for this game: the Charzuull's got Rogue, Paladin, Priest. Druid has been banned, and then Blankieh's got Paladin, Druid, and Priest, with the Rogue being banned. So exact same lineup of both of these players, but just choosing to ban differently.
Yeah. Which is quite interesting, really, seeing the players have such different bans. Um, it is definitely, maybe indicative of that they have maybe a different druid deck. Paladin, Rogue, Priest. I think we can pretty much nail down what those are going to be. There's definitely the possibility we see some kind of control Paladin, but I think it could nail down a different approach to Druid, maybe. With Blankieh choosing not to ban Charzuull's Rogue, it could mean he actually has something like an aggro token Druid, which has cards like a Crawler that are quite good against the Rogue with its Pirate Infestation. Whereas Charzuull banning the Rogue maybe indicates that he in fact was bringing something like Jade Druid, which has actually been banned anyway, so we won't actually quite find that one out. So on these players, Charzuull says he's been playing for a long time, 4 years, and competitively for about three. He also rates himself as the best Romanian arena player. So we'll, unfortunately, we won't be able to find out quite if that's true today. Whereas Blankieh, he's also been trying to get into the Hearthstone competitive scene for quite a long time. So he's been playing since Naxxramas and has also had some decent top legend positions, and he says he's been legend ever since then. So he's both these players have been playing for quite a long time, and it's not really a surprise to see them in
Ooh.
this top 16.
Sorry about that, but I'm just having a look here at the Druid deck that a Blankieh has, and it's big Druid with the Yasaj. He's got the Deathwing Dragon Lord, the Alexstrasza, and everything. So this is going to be a really nice game. However, this deck really does suffer, especially if you do not have that early ramp.
Yeah, and we do see definitely a different approach to the druid, and quite interesting that he actually then chose to ban Charzuull's druid of his own, as Big Druid, like one of the better matchups traditionally for it has been against the Jade Druid. Maybe he actually just feared that Charzuull had the aggro token Druid, um, and that might have been the reason he chose to ban the Druid instead. We can
Oh,
see though
and
Charzuull has the this Temper Rogue, and with the Lich King and Cairn, it's definitely reminiscent of the kind of lists we've been seeing from players like Ike and Zalay. They popularized the list from that they used at DreamHack, and that's been one of the popular strains of Temper Rogue ever since.
yeah, very powerful deck. You're giving yourself at least a little bit of late game, as well as those Death Knight cards from the Lich King are so strong as well. Spreading Plague, Death's Grip, all of them are really so good.
Yeah.
Or Death and Decay, sorry, Spreading Plague. Listen to me.
So one of the interesting things that's changed about Big Druid since the Druid nerfs, specifically to Innovate, is how you really want to use Innovate. Innovate was traditionally often best, in your opening hand. You wanted it as a really a way to have a really aggressive start. But these days, you kind of want Innovate to help you fill in your curve a little bit more on the awkward later turns. Either, let's say, coining out a 10 drop on turn 9 so you can follow up with another 10 drop, or coining out an Ultimate Infestation, or coining out a Primordial Drake, let's say, on turn 7 when you need it. Um, and that's why I think we've seen Blankieh just went for the more defensive play of killing off the Firefly with his hero power and saving this innovate, even though he could have innovated out that Maya Keeper last turn.
Yeah, we're going to see a backstab here as well onto the Mykeep and the coin out of this Cobalt Scalebane.
Hmm.
Charzuull is really looking good here in terms of his board strength, and that Cobalt Scalebane is going to start buffing his minions at the end of his turn. And this is where things like, patches of 5/2 can be so strong. But
Yeah.
Blankieh struggling a little bit here. He's going to go for another empty mana crystal, trying to ramp up as far as he can. He's going into Primordial Drake next turn, though, so things are looking really nice here for him.
Yeah, but this is 13 damage on the board right now, which is pretty scary if Charzuull decides to put all of that to face. And with this Shaku, it also means he's going to have his Cold Blood activated for its combo here, meaning he can push even more damage to face here. The big debate then is simply whether he actually wants to kill this Maya Keeper off or not. I kind of like going with the Shaku and cold blooding the Cobalt Scalebane and then just pushing face, but you might want to actually trade off the patches. Even though it's currently more damage than the South Sea Captain, the Captain could get buffed up by the Scalebane, and the Captain is at least protecting the patches from being at 1 health and, weak to something like Swipe. So the patches kind of is a little bit more vulnerable after if you trade the captain instead, and I think that's why he's maybe gone with these trades. This also lines up best against Primordial Drake, as the patches wouldn't die to the or the captain doesn't die to the Primordial Drake, whereas the patches would have. And here, also buffing up the Cobalt Scale main means that it's going to be able to trade cleanly into that Primordial Drake, and he would still have lethal on board. So even Primordial Drake is not enough to protect Blankieh here.
Yeah, the Primordial Drake is going to come down. It's just going to. I
But
think he might just
well,
notice.
I mean,
Ooh,
we can see that he does have the Innovate Earthen Scales. So like, Charzuull played around the Primordial Drake, but not so much the Earthen Scales that came with it in this case. But I don't think he's going to be too upset by this. The Cobalt Scalebane still kills off the Primordial Drake here, and he can still push 8 damage this turn and develop a Cairn as well at the same time, which is going to be really difficult for Blankieh to deal with.
yeah, Blank is looking. It seems like he's just falling behind you a little bit. And this is one of those things about the big druid is that they can fall behind in this type of thing, especially if they don't have that early ramp. And Ken coming down here as well. I mean, you Alex Strasser yourself here doesn't do too much. Yeah, Ultimate Infestation still turn away. So you Alex Strasser yourself. You're giving yourself an additional 9 health. However, you're still facing down 12 damage on board and
Yeah.
lethal.
And the Bone Mare is going to make it lethal here, yeah. He was 3 damage off lethal. Or actually, 2 damage off lethal with the hero power. But the Bone Mare is going to be lethal here. And Charzuull is going to be able to take this first game. Which is good in one way, as it means we're going to get to see the Big Druid again.
Yeah, big druid. It's actually a very nice deck. I enjoy playing it myself, and I enjoy seeing it being played. It's actually a very entertaining deck to watch, especially if you can get those insane combos where you have your early ramp, like your Wild Growth, Maya Keeper, Nourish. Already you're on 8, 9 mana. And that's when you can see these early creatures like the Alexstrasza being used aggressively, so early in the game where your opponent's only got about 5 mana or so. So
Hmm.
it really can swing in your favor really nicely. Followed up by Usage, just pulling out even bigger minions.
Yeah.
And it's one way that deck can really run away with it. However, we have seen there just in that instance how Charzuull was able to pull off the win there just because the Druid was not able to pick it up. As we go into the second game here with Charzuull and his Priest, and Blankieh has decided to now switch.
Oh, and it looks like Big Priest from Charzuull with the Eternal Servitude and the Shadow Essence. It does definitely look like a Big Priest rather than that Razakis Priest we're so accustomed to seeing. And Blankieh here, in this case, he's the one with the aggressive deck now against the big deck. And it looks like his hand is really good here. The Grimscale Chum, he can play that first, and if it buffs up the Murloc Tidecaller, which it does here, that's going to be a really scary threat on the board. And now, the convenience of this is also that this plays around the Potion of Madness, which is definitely something that Blankieh was taking into consideration when he chose to actually play the Grimscale Chum before playing the War Leader. Before playing the Tidecaller.
Yeah. So we're going to see, looking at this discovery here, the Shadow Word Horror, Potion of Madness, as we were discussing earlier, as well as the Silence. Do you think you just take the Silence here just because, this Murloc Tide Caller or Tide Hunter could actually be quite dangerous?
Uh, I mean, I think I'd be pretty tempted to take the Potion of Madness still. There's not much he can do like this turn with the silence, which is kind of why I kind of lean away from picking it here. I think that the Shadow Word Horror is definitely another option as well, but he knows it's definitely not going to be killing that Tide Caller probably in a few turns time. So he does go with the Potion of Madness here. It's just because that Grimscale Chum is such a good target for the Potion of Madness here. Even though Potion of Madness is a little bit awkward when you're playing Big Priest in a way, as your Eternal Servitudes can now bring you back those very minions that you stole from your opponent. It is just important here that he uses it as a way to keep alive. And obviously, uh, the most common two drops that he would have seen from the Murloc Paladin, like the Hydrologist, would have been dealt with. Something like Rockpool Hunter would have been really scary for Charzuull here, and I think that's would have been one of the biggest blowouts for him based on his kind of choice of the Potion of Madness, as it wouldn't have actually been anywhere near as effective. But even then, he could have stolen the Rock Pool and traded it into something. So yeah, I think the Potion of Madness really made sense. And for Blankieh here, choosing the secret is going to be interesting here. Redemption, best for keeping him on board, and Getaway Kodo, best for value. But it looks like he's going to go with a more board-centric choice of this Redemption.
I think the board-centric choice of the Redemption, as you were discussing, is really important. Yeah, you really want to make sure that you can maintain board presence, especially against the priest. And going into your future turns, it's going to prove, pretty useful here for him. The Shadow Vision is going to be used now again, and you could get another one, but he's going to take the Shadow Word Pain, which is going to be pretty important to this Potion of Madness. He's going to just be used to clean out that Grimescale Chum and just leave the Tide Caller here. Thing is, though, that the Tide Caller is going to be on 5-6 attack now, and pushing 6 damage already is so key. And I think really he can use Shadow Word Pain if he wants, but this Tide Caller is already out of range of things like the Shadow Word Horror as well as the Shadow Word Pain, as well as the Shadow Word Death.
Yeah, currently. I mean, the thing is, like, he kills the War Leader there, which is still a good turn for him, but he is still leaving this Tide Caller, which is just an absolute menace and has done an absolute ton of damage here over these turns. Coming down on turn 1 and still being alive on the board now.
Yeah, and that Redemption coming down as well is pretty much going to protect this Murloc, the Tide Caller, even if Charzuull finds a way to remove him.
And he did find a way. This Pint-Sized Potion alongside the Shadow Word Horror is going to remove these minions. It'll still bring back this Tide Caller, but it's only going to be a 1/1 now. Not coming back with all those buffs that it accrued thanks to all the early Murlocs. And now Blankieh doesn't really have any of the similar kind of Murlocs to follow up. So the best he's going to have is the Stampeding Kodo, as he looks to try and just have some kind of minion on the board that will survive for next turn when he can use that Spike Ridge Steed.
Oh, Obsidian Statue from the Shadow Essence, so important here. Actually got more attack now than what it originally has, as well as the fact that it has lifesteal, so important.
Well, I mean, what's most important is just that Death Rattle. Here, he's gonna kill off the Obsidian Statue, but now it's actually gonna kill off one of the minions here. Luckily for Blankieh, actually, it kind of just kills off the 1/1, which means he is at least still gonna have this 5/6. But now we're gonna see this is where Big Priest's plan is. It's cheat out minion and then just resummon it with that Eternal Servitude. And in this case, as you mentioned, that lifesteal is actually going to be a huge factor, as the lifesteal is just going to be getting Charzuull all the way back up, as it's going to take 2 attacks for Blankieh to kill this, which means that he's going to have to give Charzuull a total of 8 health here.
Yeah, things are not looking that great here for Blankieh, because that Obsidian Statue, even though it dies, it's also going to kill off another minion here, as well as just generating him so much health. Luckily for Blankieh, it only gets rid of that 1/1 Silver Hand Recruit, though.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he was hoping for when he went for that play of the Grimscale Chum and the Hero Power. He was hoping to divert that Death Rattle into a less valuable minion. But here, Charzuull has some interesting choices. He could go with this Shadow Reaper Anduin. It does obviously kill off the Stampeding Kodo here. He could also just be a little bit more greedy, or I mean, short-term thinking. Let's say with the Lich King. The Lich King would have obviously not killed off anything, but it would have forced Blankieh to trade into it. He does know that Blankieh at least has one more Murloc in hand, though. This Cold Light Seer and the Gentle Megasaur at least giving Blankieh some kind of synergy for his Murlocs. Probably imagine he might take +3 attack, having already seen this Shadow Reaper Anduin now. It might be the best bet for him to put on pressure, as he needs to kind of kill Charzuull soon, and Poisonous and Taunt don't really do much for him here.
Yeah, the +3 attack is probably the most important one that he actually has available to him. I think he would have actually really hoped that he could find maybe like +3 health as well.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're late into this game pretty much already, and you know things like Dragonfire will actually hurt you here.
Yep, and speaking of Dragonfire, it is going to hurt Blankieh quite a lot here, as thanks to that Void Form Hero Power, another reason Charzuull opted to play that Shadow Reaper Anduin in the previous turn, he's actually able to clear up that Spike Ridge Steed as well, so, the Stegodon from the Spike Ridge Steed, which is also pretty important, as it means that Blankieh doesn't have any kind of target on the board for any other kind of buffs that he might have.
Yeah, the Reinforce is also just going to be used here, as well as then this developing this True Silver Champion again as well. But I mean, going into this kind of turn, Potion of Madness clears up this board, and pretty much from then you can also just play this Ysera, and Ysera also so strong here.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, Charzuull can afford to be greedy here. He can afford to play the Ysera instead of playing the Lich King. His health total is high enough thanks to those
Obsidian statues.
Yeah, the Obsidian statues, sorry, that came down earlier, and now it's going to be really difficult for Blankieh to find his way back into this. I do kind of feel like it's kind of all over for him here. The Lich King, with this Void Form Hero Power, it's going to be very difficult for Blankieh to stick minions at any point here, and as we know, based on the big in Charzoull's deck's name, there's only really big minions left for him, so Army of the Dead is one of the best things you can get with a big deck from the Lich King, as it's going to be bringing out pretty much just big minions.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing that's going to be left in his deck here. Playing the Cold Light Seer and then using Divine Favor. I don't even know if it was really worthwhile doing that. I mean, you're getting one additional card, but
Divine Favor is kind of the only way he gets back in this game, and I think he does have to go for the extra minion here. I'm not sure that the extra health would have mattered enough. I think he probably has to go for something like the Noble Sack here, just to try and protect his minions a little bit on the board. He can also then use something like Vilefin or Murloc Tidecaller to just get a few more minions on board, as he wants to just have as many minions as he can on board now, going into a possible Sunkeeper Tarium turn next turn.
Yeah, Charzuull looking so strong here now again, with the opportunity that he could potentially go ahead in this game 2-0 considering this. But I agree, Blankieh using having to develop this Noble Sacrifice, and Blankieh just going to be leaving one mana, not going to choose to play the Vilefin Inquisitor or anything here.
Yep.
I don't see the point for it.
Yeah, it's...
Can you see any reason that he would have chosen not to?
He's doing it so that he can play Sunkeeper Tarium plus the minions in the same turn. He's basically expecting Charzuull to have some kind of clear, and this way he plays better around clears, because he gets more value out of his Sunkeeper Tarium next turn. And as it turns out, we can see with the Ysera Awakens, Charzuull would have had all the clears he needed. And now the Shadow Essence bringing out another Obsidian Destroyer means that Charzuull is going to be gaining back a lot of life, even if Blankieh does go for this Sunkeeper Tarium turn.
Yeah, it looks like he is going to be going for it, but I mean, still, that the death rate of the Obsidian statue is just so important here for Charzuull here. So yes, it's all great that he's able to reduce the health of all of these minions as well as the attacks, but things are still not looking that great here.
Yeah. It
Ysera
is definitely.
Awakens. Ysera Awakens clears this entire board.
Yeah, Ysera Awaken's really powerful here. You can even gain the health first by attacking him with the Obsidian Destroyer. Um, and he can just use the hero power here to go. He can actually also use the Dream to return something to his hand if he wants. But it looks like Ysera Awake. Is this actually going to be lethal? With the Dream, the hero power, and the Ysera
Yes, it
Awakens
is.
here, it is actually going to be lethal. So rather than just clearing your opponent's board, just kill him. It's
Yeah,
an easier
I've,
solution.
I've heard that reducing your opponent's life to 0 is better than clearing off the board. I don't know. It seemed like my theory plays out there as Charzuull moves up 2-0 in this series. He's looking really, really strong here. First having the Rogue, where he was able to pick up a really nice win there over the Big Druid, and then his own version of Big with the Priest picking up a very nice win there.
Yeah, good win here for Charzuull. Um, it's always a good position to be 2-0 up. We did see in our last series though that ProDG was able to bring it back against Kapata from a 2-0 down deficit. So it's not the end of the world for Blankieh here. He does still have some kind of hope, but it's going to be difficult. He still has to beat Charzuull's Paladin, I believe. That's the
Hmm.
only deck remaining for him, and that's not going to be very easy with decks like Big Druid, and maybe Blankieh also even has Big Priest based on the fact that he brought Big Druid, and he might be just trying to target those kind of decks that are weak to those kind of big strategies.
Yeah, Charzuull only left with his Paladin deck here, and going to have to try and find a win against the Murloc Paladin and all of that. So we're going to be able to see Blankieh's Priest here as well. And looking at the Mind Blast and the Spirit Lash, it looks like he's actually playing the Razikis Priest.
Yep, it does seem to be Razakis Priest, which is a lot better against the Paladin, usually than the Big Priest, even though we did see Charzuull manage to get the win with his Big Priest. Charzuull, a pretty decent opening here. You can go Coin Rockpool Hunter into Rockpool Hunter, and that's pretty good. Blankieh here, he does have some good defensive minions though, in this Tar Creeper and the Cabal Talon Priest to come down and buff up the Tar Creeper if it survives.
Yeah, don't know if it's going to survive, but however, this top deck of the Shadow Word Pain is very nice here. No buffed up Murloc going to be here for Charzuull. However, he can still just play this Rockpool Hunter. But we're going to see this Tar Creeper, and there's a very high likelihood that it's going to be sticking to the board unless Charzuull can find some like a Rallying Blade or something. All the buffs in the world.
Yeah, this Tar Creeper is pretty good, but it looks like Charzuull just going to go with the Kazakus here. Looking, ideally, I imagine to get the board clear. Draw two cards is very powerful though, as well. And he just kind of wants to get some kind of board clear against these minions, because he needs to be able to deal with that Flappy Bird if Charzuull's able to find a way to connect it to Blankieh's face.
Yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't actually find any sort of he doesn't take the draw. At least he does take the polymorph for random minion as well as dealing 4 damage to all minions. So he does have a way to kind of clear out this board. However, Charles will get connecting face with the vicious fledgling and going to be taking the rocky carcass, getting the additional health onto that Flappy Bird, kind of now destroying the plan that Blankieh had for the Kazakus potion. However, things are still not out of reach here for him. He could get very lucky here at polymorphing. However, he can still just clear out this board either way if he decides to just trade the Kazakus into the 3/6 and then just playing the Kazakus potion. If he decides to go for that kind of clear, he does still have options in the form of the Cabal Talon Priest, but I think clearing out the board is a lot better
Yeah.
than letting that vicious fledgling get an attack on your face and potentially get things like
plus
Wouldn't you?
health. Yeah, I mean, like the big scary thing was there. If the vicious fledgling did manage to run away with things, it would have been like if it was getting plus health and things like that. That would have been really scary and difficult for Blankieh to deal with. It looks like Blankieh is playing a list that probably does have the Orkanias in as well, which helps a little bit against Paladin. Gives you a little bit more board clear with that circular healing, and he does have the gadgets in as well to help get more cycle. Very cycle-centric list here with the Nomish Inventor as well. And the question here is there anything you can get from this Curious Glimmerroot that's actually going to be good enough against this Paladin? Something like Rallying Blade could be pretty good here. Other than that,
True silver champion?
yeah, but
Won't be able to use it now.
yeah, that's the problem. Like with the true silver champion, the problem is he can't use it now. I suppose he does have the option of just going Curious Glimmerroot and Cabal Talon Priest, and both of those contest the Vilefin Inquisitor that's currently on the board. They don't really do that well against the Gentle Megasaur though, but I suppose he's hoping to maybe find some kind of way of dealing with that. I do kind of like the Curious Glimmerroot. It does fill out his curve well. Going with these 2-drops instead is a lot more, oh sorry, these 2 attack minions is a lot more passive in a way. They don't really contest even the Vilefin Inquisitor, and that could be a problem for him.
Yeah, the Charzuull picking up that Cobalt Scalebane, but Blankieh does have the Silence, which is a great counter to something like the Spike Ridge Siege. Yes, your opponent's still pushing in 7 damage. However, you're going to be removing that all-important Death Rattle and this Shadow of Death. Also being picked up to kind of deal with anything else that's pretty much big and that will be summoned here by Charzuull.
Yeah, I mean, if he really wants, he can even silence it and then Shadow Word Death it as a way to clear this board entirely this turn. But it looks like he might actually just want to use the silence with this Gadgetzan Auctioneer now to cycle. That will mean that the Gadgetzan Auctioneer will at least be challenging the Gentle Megasaur on board. So, you know, maybe that is his plan here. He's going to be able to get at least 2 card draw from this if he doesn't want to use the Circle of Healing. Because he's obviously going to be trade off his loot order, or be able to trade off his loot order here. Unfortunately, no damage minions to play kind of Northshire Cleric Circular Healing here, but he is going to just play the Binding Heal just to get the draw himself, and quite importantly does pick up a Shadow Reaper Anduin here. So that,
yeah, choosing also not to use his Circle of Healing though.
Yeah, I think he's keeping that because it can be used with Shadow Reaper Anduin. It can also just be used with a Northshire Cleric that he currently has in hand. So there is a certain amount of versatility that the card does offer him, at least. And I think that's why he's chosen to keep it. And here, Charzuull, making sure he doesn't run out of resources, just playing this Curator, which also happens to line up pretty well against Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah, that Shadow Reaper Anduin's battle cry of destroying all minions with 5 attack or more. 4 attack, again, we've spoken about this, and I think it'll continuously be spoken about how good 4 attack minions are against Priest, just being out of range of things like Shadow Word, Death, and Pain.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Grimscale Chum, not really what you're looking for from the Paladin deck there. No Murlocs in your own deck to buff up, but he kind of knew that it was Grimscale Chum there, not Blessed Champion or Divine Strength, so he kind of had to go with the Chum.
A minion is a minion after all.
Yeah.
It queues up very well with the hero ability of Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Ooh.
Should he get the there's a lot of card draw here.
Yeah, this is exactly what he's keeping that Circular Healing and Northshire Cleric for, to use with something like this Pyromancer, and this is going to give him a lot of card draw. He can he can draw 4 cards here, if I'm not mistaken, if he wants to.
Can draw 6.
6?
If he uses a Mind Blast first, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, right, because he's healing his opponent's minions as well. I forgot about that part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Circle of Healing here is going to generate him 5 cards here. Really nice way to refill your hand.
Yeah, and then he's also got the hero power if he wants to use it, which will give him another card if he heals up any of the minions here. But he does find Holy Smite. He might be tempted to use that instead to clear off this Murloc War Leader. He can still actually heal up as well and that's going to mean he still gets the extra card. He can play the Grimscale Chum here at his last second just to finally get it on board and get some kind of value off it maybe next turn.
Yeah. But more importantly is that from all of his card draws, Blankieh has been able to pick up the Raza, and he's also been able to pick up Prophet Velen. So he's really got everything he needs now to start doing a lot of damage. He can go Raza next turn. He can then start looking at, okay, when will be the best time for me to play this Shadow Reaper Anduin? And by doing all of that, he'll be able to at least tie up this series because Charzuull is pulling away here 2-0.
Yeah, and I mean Blankieh, that choice to keep the circular healing for more draw later really did work out well for him, and obviously being able to draw that Raza, right there, pretty much at the end of his draws there, is just so crucial because Raza and Shadow Reaper Anduin is just so good at dealing with any of the boards that the Paladin's able to assemble. You can just completely out attrition the Paladin usually, and Charzuull definitely going to be looking for something like plus health here on this Gentle Megasaur.
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, there we go. We're speaking about the health there. Rocky Carpus is going to be the card or the adapt that will be chosen here, and his minions are starting to look pretty threatening. Yeah.
Yeah, the Raza can be used alongside Shadow of Death here to help clean up some of the board. Um, I the Shadow Visions, he could look for the Dragonfire Potion, which is exactly what he does find. Um, I'm not sure. You might have almost even been guaranteed the Dragonfire Potion there. I think that's definitely a good answer here. It doesn't quite clear the whole board, unless you obviously take the trades, which he probably will. He can take the card draw first as well, or he can opt to actually just get a little bit more extra damage in, and play Thalnos into the Dragonfire Potion, but it looks like he's just going to take the card draw from the Northshire Cleric here, and then play this Dragonfire Potion to clear up the board.
I think going for the card draw is a little bit more important because you do know that you've got possibly one or two more low-cost cards in your deck that you can start comboing as you start nearing the turn here, where you're going to have Raza as well as a Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Hmm. Uh, Tyrion here, usually a pretty good card, but honestly, this might just encourage Blankieh to go with the Shadow Reaper Anduin this turn, as it'll allow him to kill off the Tyrion and also kill off the 1/1 with the hero power if he wishes. Or he can choose to hero power first if he values 2 health more than leaving the 1/1 on board. But personally, I think I prefer killing the 1/1. Alternatively, he can just go with the Raza and the Shadow of Death. That isn't going to kill the 1/1 though, which is a little bit of a concern, I think. And it is also sometimes awkward playing Raza before Shadow Reaper Anduin when you have both of them in hand, because Shadow Reaper Anduin will obviously kill off the Raza.
I think it's also perfectly fine that he's done this, is because he knows that his opponent has got a lot of cards that buff his minions, like Blessing of Kings, Bone Mare, and all of that. So even if he does choose to buff up, he can still have a chance of clearing them with that Shadow Reaper Anduin, with it destroying all minions with at least 5 health.
Yeah, that's true. He could actually just be baiting his opponent into buffing up this Murloc. Obviously, the one buff that does kind of avoid Shadow Reaper Anduin shenanigans is the Spikeridge Steed that we can see he's just drawn now. Um, and with that Powered Shield buff on the Raza, it means he has to use both the weapon and the minion plus buffs in order to actually kill off this Raza. But he's going to go with the Spikeridge Steed plus the um, Blessing of Kings here, which does also cleanly kill off the Raza. And quite importantly, he doesn't actually take damage with his to his hero by using the weapon, which is actually very relevant against the deck that is ultimately trying to burst you down with that Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah, the Shadow Reaper Anduin is going to come down here. It's going to clear out the Murloc hand there. Going to leave the Spikeridge Steed on board though, but this Void form is going to start becoming pretty relevant here. All this little machine gun, and he's got a lot of low-cost cards in his hand as well as that Prophet Velen.
Yeah, and if Charzuull goes for double Cobalt Scalebane here, and the Cobalt Scalebanes buff each other, then Blankieh will have lethal on board. I think he might have lethal or close to lethal anyway with the... Whoop, that's one Scalebane buffing another one.
Nope.
Oh, okay, they buffed that one. I think he's relatively close to lethal here anyway with the Valen. He can cast or he can't cast the third spell now. That's the big thing, right? The fact that it buffed the Spike Steed means he can't cast the Potion of Madness anymore, which is like one extra spell he's losing. So the most he can do here with Valen is 14, no, 12 damage. So he's a little bit off with the Prophet Valen here. And Dragonfire Potion obviously doesn't clear up those Cobalt Scalebanes. So that's a little bit of a concern for him here. He might just opt to go with the hero power to clear up the 8-5 Scalebane. Might still use the Dragonfire Potion to clear up the 5-5 and then just go face with some of his other threats. Or it looks like he's gonna go with the Spirit Lash here. That does mean if he uses his hero power here, he can also get a bunch of he can kill quite a few of these minions still. Probably gonna just use this to kill the other Cobalt Scalebane and plays the Orkanai as well here just to get more minions on board. He knows next turn he doesn't need much alongside this Prophet Valen to kill Charzuull. Probably just 3 spells in the Prophet Valen will do it.
Yep,
Or
pretty
3
much.
cards in the Prophet, or 2 cards in the Prophet Valen. Sorry, 3
Yeah.
cards total.
Oh, this Bone Mare though is going to be so strong here. Going to buff up this Stegodon, to what is it, 9-8, and he has used his Shadow Word Death, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and the fact that there's currently no Potion of Madness target on the board is the only thing keeping Charzuull alive right now. If Charzuull chooses to Hero Power or play Grimscale Chum, he will actually just die next turn to the Prophet Valen. But obviously, Blankieh does still have a pretty good turn with the Dragonfire Potion. Okay, it looks like Charzuull is going to go with the Hero Power and the Chum. And now, thanks to that Potion of Madness actually having a target, Blankieh is able to just Hero Power with the Prophet Valen, the Thalnos, and the Potion of Madness, and that will be able to give him enough damage, I think. Unless my maths is wrong here.
So it'll be two damage to face.
It's 2 plus 4 times 3. Which is actually 1 damage off, sorry. Yeah, so it's actually 1 damage off, so he just needs to find a little bit extra damage this turn, which is not too hard here. He can just use the Dragonfire Potion to clear up the board, and then he just needs to make sure he doesn't die, which shouldn't be too difficult here.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too difficult here for him. He's going to play this Dragonfire Potion. It's going to clear out the board. It's going to heal him out as well, and it's going to keep this Priest of the Feast alive, which is also pretty important. And this is pretty much going to guarantee him some form of lethal next turn.
Yeah. Now with his opponent on 8, he just needs to play Prophet Valen and 1 card, basically, to have lethal. So, yeah, easy enough lethal here for Blankieh. Charzuull probably knows it is coming as well, as he hasn't yet seen the Prophet Valen.
Yeah, there's going to be the fatigue, and there's the well played coming out as well. This is probably just him knowing that this is the end of the game, as Blankieh is going to summon this Prophet Valen, and the Void Form is just going to kill him immediately, as Charzuull goes down, and Blankieh picks up his first win here.
Yeah, Blankieh bringing it back to 2-1 in the series, but it's going to be a little bit difficult for him against that Paladin. It's going to be difficult for him to get a win with the Big Druid in particular. That's the matchup that really stands out for me. Obviously he does have the Paladin Mirror as well himself, so that's a matchup that's definitely winnable. But the Big Druid versus the Murloc Paladin is not a good matchup for the Big Druid at all. It's about 60% favored for the Paladin.
Yeah, so going into this next game, do you think Blankieh is just going to go for his more or his highest chance here? Well, Blankieh is, so it's going to be a Paladin Mirror here instead.
Yeah, he's just going with the Paladin Mirror here. He just wants to do what he can to keep his hopes alive in the series. And, you can really make your opponent nervous when they're at 2-2 rather than 3-2. Or, sorry, when they're at 2-2 rather than 2-1 by playing your worst matchup then. So you can sometimes get a little bit of an advantage like that. And that can also work. Or that can also be part of the reason that Blankieh actually went with his Paladin here. We saw in the last series where ProDG was actually able to get the comeback or get the reverse sweep and make the comeback.
Yeah, I like this play here by Blankieh, choosing to play the Grumstail Chump first, then coining out um, the Valfen Inquisitor. I mean, it's pretty much a good start for both of these players here. And this Rockpool Hunter is going to be doing some work, keeping this Valfen Inquisitor on board for a little bit longer.
Yeah, the Hydrologist being buffed up here is quite nice. It at least contests these minions on board for now. But we can see that Charzuull has both the Rallying Blade and the Rock Bullets in hand. But Blankieh here goes for the Redemption. You know, we spoke about it in a previous series. It makes sense to go for the board-centric option in a matchup like this, where it's really all about contesting the board. And that is what he's gone for. It's a little bit awkward in terms of he doesn't really have a good turn to play this Secrets at the moment with the way his curve is going. So it's going to be interesting to see how he actually manages to fit that Redemption in. Maybe just saving it for higher value later. But Charzuull here, the Murloc War Leader, actually really good way of contesting the board here. Unfortunately, because it's not giving plus health anymore, we can see it makes things a lot more awkward in that he does have to trade off a minion. You know, if this was pre-nerf and it was still giving plus health, he would have been able to actually just use that Rockpool Hunter and keep both his minions alive. But with the way things are now, it's not quite as clean for him. And Blankieh here, he might be forced to use a Bluegill Warrior here just to kill off this Rockpool Hunter, which really doesn't feel good. And it looks like he is going to take this opportunity to set up the Redemption as well. Looking to just go with the True Silver next turn, I imagine, to clear off that Murloc War Leader.
Yeah, the thing is that by playing the Redemption, you're going to give your opponent the chance to actually test what kind of secrets they are. But I feel that using it now is probably the only real chance you're going to be able to do it, because you're going to need whatever turn whatever minion you're going to want to set up plus an additional mana to do it. And I don't think you have the time to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's risking getting a really low value Redemption like this because he has no idea what minion he's going to have on, let's say, turn 5 when he's most likely to actually play a minion again, because he's most likely want to True Silver next turn, so it could be an issue. Rockpool Hunter here will be a little bit of a mistake now to buff the War Leader after having attacked. He kind of just missed one damage, but I suppose he was mostly wanting to check for that Noble Sacrifice first.
Yeah, I suppose that's all right, though, at the end of the day. He's been able to test. It's not Repentance. It's not Noble Sacrifice, so it's pretty much only, and it's not Eye for an Eye, so it's pretty much only going to be Getaway Kodo as well as the Redemption, which is the secret that is actually in play here at the moment.
Yep. No Sacred Trial in the meta anymore.
I wonder how many people actually played that card, because, I mean, it didn't seem the greatest, to be honest.
Yeah, that was not a very effective Paladin secret. And we can see here, Blankieh actually, he is going to use that hero power here before this Cold Light Seer. Like, even though it's Redemption, and you know you don't really want to get Redemption on a Silver Hand Murloc, it's still kind of okay because he is at least forcing his opponent to use the weapon to kill either of these minions here. Like, it doesn't really matter here. Charzuull's gonna kill one of them with the weapon, and then he can just kill the Redemption minion with the 1/1. Instead, choosing to do it this way around, I suppose he values the health on his minion more than his hero's health, which does make a lot of sense, honestly. As we've spoken about at length, this matchup really is just about fighting for the board.
Yeah. And Charzuull doing that really, really well here at this point in time. And we're going to be able to see the Curator come down. And Charzuull's got a very nice curve going into the late game here. Curator into the Lich King next turn. And he's got all the value from that Curator, getting the Cobalt Scalebane, the Megasaur, as well as that Hydrologist.
Yeah, and Blankieh here, he has the Gentle Megasaur as a way to possibly find some value from his Finger here. You know, something like Poisonous would work. But he also has the Sunkeeper Tarium that he could use. But it looks like he's just going to go with the weapon here. That's going to allow him to kill off this Tidal Hand, and his Finger will at least still survive on the board for now.
Yeah, it will survive for now. However, you know, he's also taking damage, and there's going to be the Stegodon that's going to come out of this Tidal Hand. Uh, I don't think there's anything they could really pull out from the deck. I mean, he does
Or
get the bluegill.
that's actually pretty unfortunate in a way. You didn't really want the bluegill there, because there was no good target to charge into. So not the best sort of option there for Blankieh. It's kind of something you almost would prefer to draw it, so that you could play it with Spikered Steed or even
Yeah.
Sunky Batarium later than having it come out now with the Finja. You'd much rather just have a stronger Murloc overall. Obviously, like with War Leader or even Codletsia or Rockpool Hunter would have been better.
Yeah. So looking at this board here for Charzuull, he's actually looking really, really strong here. And as mentioned, he does actually have another option here in terms of the Tyrion, should he want to summon something else for 8 mana. But I think he might just choose to go a little bit wider here using this Hydrologist. Noble Sacrifice is actually a very nice card to get here.
Yeah, Noble Sack pretty good against this small board. I think Bluegill was actually the worst Murloc he could have gotten. Like every other Murloc is just strictly better. It's either already like the same stats or it would have been better stats. But anyway, um, now things are looking quite tricky for Blankieh. He does have the Sunky Batarium here. He can use the hero power as well to get some extra value, but he's not going to be able to kill the Cobalt Scalebane here, and because of that, Noble Sacrifice, he's not even going to be able to kill both the taunts. So the Sunky Batarium doesn't really do quite as much work as he would like it to do here. And Charzuull, we can see he has ridiculous value still in his hand with that Lich King as well as Sunky Batarium. And even like Vicious Fledgling plus Rock plus Spikered Steed on one turn is a pretty silly turn.
Yeah, so we're going to see the title hand here. This Sunkeeper Tarim is going to at least reduce this board down a little bit, but this Noble Sacrifice is really going to protect Charzuull here.
Yeah, Noble Sacrifice helps him just keep the extra mana on board. Thankfully for Blankieh, at least doesn't kill his 3/3 Murloc. So he still looks kind of even on board right now, but we can see Charzuull has, lots of options here. The Spikered Steed looks pretty good, and he can also play that Flappy Bird alongside it as a way to try and push his advantage in the following turns.
Yeah, he's also got this. So the Spike Siege is going to come down here, giving an additional taunt here for Charzuull. The Rallying Blade will be really nice here just to help clear up this Sunkipitarium. And both of these taunts that he has contest this board here by Blankieh, and going to go face here with the Cobalt Scalebane, going to be buffing up that Hydrologist even further. 8/6 Murloc is pretty scary. I think Blanky's going to need to look for and hope for something like a Poisonous from this Gentle Megasaur.
Yeah, he could also guarantee it with just War Leader plus Spikered Steed here. That would guarantee kill the Hydrologist. I'm not sure I like Charzuull's choice to go with the Rallying Blade over the um, Vicious Fledgling. I suppose he keeps maybe a slightly better board, but Vicious Fledgling could have been really scary, especially if it got a buff from the Cobalt Scalebane. But anyway, it looks like Blankieh here is just going to go with the full Murloc board and then the Gentle Megasaur. And I believe with those options, he doesn't actually have a way to kill off this 8/6. So that means that Charzuull is actually just going to have lethal here.
Yeah, Charzuull going to have lethal there, and that is going to be his third win, if I'm not mistaken, if I can count correctly.
Yeah, Charzuull
Okay.
taking the series 3-1 over Blankieh, and he is going to be progressing to the finals
Yeah.
up against either Prodigy or Trav No Boy BBBB as
Yeah.
as his name on the ESL website at least says it is.
Travner, BBBBB. I do apologize if my dogs are barking in the background and you have just picked it up. Nevertheless, Charzuull is one step closer to qualifying and locking himself a spot in the top 8 for the event going on further.
Yeah,
So I don't
our
know if you have any more closing thoughts about that game.
Yeah, I mean, both players obviously really keen on their competitive Hearthstone, and Charzuull making a good showing for Romania up against Blankieh, who's from Serbia. So we're gonna have a Romanian in the finals, up against either one of the players, but we will find out who the other finalist is going to be soon, and then we will be bringing you that game coming up next. So don't go anywhere. We will be back soon for the final of this Season 6 qualifier for the ESL Southeast Europe Championship.